Welcome to segment 2 of the 2013 Granite School District School Community Council training. This segment should last about 10 to 15 minutes and is for all members of the School Community Council. If you have not received training at all this year and are not a new member, this is the one segment you do need to see. If you are a new member, you should also view segment 1, which is linked in the same YouTube channel and has been sent out far and wide to all of our School Community Council members. If you do have any questions, you can always contact us to the information in the School Community Council Handbook. This session or segment will cover points of emphasis as well as some recent changes in the law. Although the law has remained somewhat consistent over the last year or two, there are some minor changes, and the points of emphasis are given because, frankly, we keep having issues crop up within those particulars. So if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to bring those to your principal or bring those directly to myself. My name is Ben Horsley, Director of Communications for Granite School District, and I will be providing the presentation today. So, as I mentioned, the portion of this segment we'll cover is a lot of points of emphasis. We'd like to just immediately go right into the training. Recording of meetings is no longer a requirement. Meeting minutes should be kept and retained for 3 years on the school's individual website under a School Community Council tab if possible. What's new this year is that councils must adopt rules of orders and of procedure. These would be the things that would govern your meeting and your processes, the length of discussion that is authorized, how motions are brought about. It could also include guidelines for ethical behavior and appropriate civil discourse. It should include information about how visitors and public comments are handled. We'll get into that a little more in depth later on. Council makeup at this point in time has been altered again. The minimum, and this is the minimum, you can have more, but the minimum is 4 patrons for elementaries and junior highs and 6 for high schools, with at least 2 more patrons than you have employee members, including the principal. For example, at an elementary or junior high, if you had 4 parents on the School Community Council, you would then have the principal serving as an employee member and an additional teacher or other school employee serving. If your council wanted to up that to 6, you could then have 3 teachers or staff and the principal serving on that council as well. Similarly, for high schools, the minimum parent participation on the council is 6, with at least, obviously, 2 additional patrons more than the employees, including the principal. In the past, there's been an understanding that there's a ratio of some sort. This is the ratio. It's not 1 employee for every 2 parents. It's simply at least 2 more patrons than there are employees total. Public and employees may serve as patron members at their individual school, even if it is one they work at, as long as they're not a licensed employee. That would mainly screen out teachers from serving as parent members in the same schools that their children attend if they also work at that location. Essentially, licensed employees cannot. If there's a part-time aide who's also a parent member, that is still acceptable, and they can be retained as a parent member or serve as an employee member. It's really up to the position they choose to seek. Rosters for your full council membership and their contact information, along with a proposed meeting schedule, must be sent home within the first 6 weeks of school and updated as necessary throughout the school year. That doesn't mean it has to be that particular schedule throughout the entire year, but it is important that you try to put a proposed schedule together and get that information home to your patrons so that they can participate if they'd like to. Remember, all community reporting requirements have been eliminated, with the exception of the fall summary that gets reported online and should be sent home with your patrons and communicated in every way possible. That's not to say that there shouldn't be some communications that are going home on a regular basis regarding your School Community Council and the decisions that are being made. It just does not mean those reporting requirements are requisite. We'll discuss that a little further in segment 3, which is for chairs and vice chairs, but is certainly appropriate for all members of the council to see. Remember that no portion of a School Community Council may be closed. There is no such thing as an executive session of your School Community Council. It must be open to the public, and your minutes must be recorded at all times. Lastly, there should be no public discussion of human resource issues in your School Community Council, and I've cautioned your chairs and vice chairs along with your principals, that sometimes those discussions do crop up and how they are to handle those situations. For instance, if it is entirely appropriate for a patron to have a concern about a particular employee, that is totally within the bounds and the rights of every patron to have those concerns, but those concerns should be addressed in an appropriate way. For instance, if that topic were to come up about, for instance, a school secretary, and it would be appropriate at that point in time for the principal to say, you know what, that is an important issue, but one that's not legally allowed to be discussed in an open and public meeting. Why don't we adjourn our meeting, and then you can come into my office and we'll discuss that issue further and get your concerns addressed. That would be the appropriate way to handle those types of situations, and hopefully the school community council members can support that. Remember, our meetings are open to the public. Anyone can attend, and this has cropped up as being somewhat of an issue. This does not mean visitors can monopolize your meetings. If you look at the way the legislature is handled, and certainly even our own school board meetings, these are not public meetings. What they are is meetings held in the public eye, and school community councils fall under that same category. Visitors to the legislature must sign in and have opportunities to provide comment at appropriate times. Generally at the legislature, it's during a committee hearing. They can't walk onto the floor of the legislature and start speaking anytime they desire. That would be inappropriate. The legislature is holding their meeting in the public eye, but that does not make it a public meeting. Similarly, the school board has their meeting the first Tuesday of every month, and no individual can come in and start speaking to any issue they would like without being invited first to participate by the school board. However, there are opportunities to provide comment to the school board within that meeting. And so school community councils need to act in that same fashion, and particularly as they develop rules of order and procedures required by the law, they should provide ample opportunity for visitors to participate in a meaningful way and in an appropriate way without monopolizing the meeting in their meetings. Your schedule, again, with the roster should go out to your patrons as soon as the school is started, and it should be retained on your website and updated as appropriately. I like that word, appropriate, if you can't tell. Agenda with the date, time, and location and minutes from the previous meeting should be retained on the website and distributed a week before the meeting. Previously, this was 24 hours in advance. It is a week before, and I would encourage you to get that put together a couple weeks in advance. And generally, when you're reviewing your meeting minutes or going through your current meeting, it's a good time to put your agenda together for the next meeting. And that's really the easiest way to do that. As you see issues that will be cropped up and some regular ongoing issues, that's when that agenda gets put together. And I'll discuss that more in segment 3 for our chairs and vice chairs. Quorums must be present and roll call votes must be recorded in the meeting minutes. When we say quorum, we mean 50% plus 1. If you have 8 members of your school community council, you would need to have at least 5 present. It doesn't matter the makeup of those members, whether it's all the employee members or all the parent members. However, I would discourage against meetings without having your principal there, since they are required to ensure legal compliance of your school community council. That's not to say it can happen, but once again, I would discourage that as they play a critical role within your school community council. So for any action or the meeting to be conducted, a quorum must be present. When you're taking action on items and voting on those types of things, particularly finance issues, when you're funding your land trust plan, those votes must be recorded in the meeting minutes. It can't be 5-4, 2 against. It needs to be Bob voted yes, Sally voted nay, and so on and so forth. That should be recorded in that fashion. All voting should be conducted in the meeting, and the principal can vote. They are a voting member of the council. And what I mean by this is sometimes we've had principals just pass around a sheet and have people sign it to approve the plan. That's certainly not inappropriate, but it does not constitute an actual vote. A vote must occur in the public meeting, in an open meeting, and in an open fashion. This is for transparency purposes and for the meeting minutes to know who voted in favor of the plan and who is not in favor of it. Remember, if you want to take any action, meaning voting on something, it must be listed on the agenda in order to take action. Moving along with our points of emphasis, we wanted to highlight a few things regarding our election procedures. Remember, your timelines and procedures must be determined by May 1st in the spring for the following fall's election. As we are here in the fall of 2013, hopefully you followed our timeline and the information we provided to you to determine your vacancies and acknowledge who was not going to be on the council anymore or who was up for re-election, and we're following that procedure, and we help you with that. Notice of candidacy information should be distributed by May 15th. That includes statutory requirements, invitation to file as a candidate, should include the deadline by which they should declare and how they can do so, where they can locate those forms, and how to vote and how the election will proceed. Remember that your deadlines for candidate declarations, the deadline by which somebody must indicate whether they want to be on the school community council, should not be prior to the first day of school. We start the publication process and the publicizing of that in the spring to engender interest, and we carry that through the summer with your registration materials so that by the time fall hits, you have had ample opportunity to let parents know of the opportunity to serve on the school community council. So generally within the first 2 weeks is when that deadline should occur, with sufficient time previous to the actual election. It should be at least 10 days previous to your election that the deadline occurs. Once again, your election should not commence prior to, it must commence prior to October 15th, but really should be done by the end of September. There's no reason why it can't be done and meet the other criteria of the law and our own individual school district policy. Incumbents are not automatically in. This continues to be an issue where people say, well, Bob's just going to stay on the council, so we don't need to hold an election. No, Bob needs to run and be counted up for re-election and give other people the chance to serve. Each parent receives one vote. It's not one vote per household. So in addition to that, we must get signatures of those who vote. So whether you hold your election electronically or do it in person at SCPs, there should be a sign-in sheet before they get their ballot, or a way for us to declare provide some integrity to the ballot. There must be a way for them to validate their eligibility to vote electronically, generally using an email as a signature if they're going to do an online vote. It must indicate on the ballot how many vacancies, and this is specific language out of the law, and allow voters to vote for up to that number of candidates. They don't have to vote for up to that many. They could vote for one of the 3 vacancies, but if they vote for 4, that's obviously a problem. Remember, the principal, along with an employee member and a parent member, must process all of the ballots. I'm going to spend a little time just on some points of emphasis on your SSAP, and as you develop the plan and report on that. Here's some considerations with respect to your plans. The goals need to be academic. Now, there's a variety of things at the School Community Council, and we encourage you to think outside of the box on how the council functions. But the council can have a variety of input in multiple ways at the school level, but the plans must be academic related. Create only as many goals as necessary to create a coherent group of strategies. For instance, in the earlier segment, I was discussing that if your goal was to improve 5th grade math scores, I apologize, that's my computer setting up a reminder, so just ignore that noise. Remember to create only as many goals as you need to actually create some strategies pertinent to that particular goal. You should have some flexibility, though, in those goals by stating you will hire teachers, either hourly or contract, or paraeducators to implement the strategies. If you indicate only teachers and you only have enough funding to actually pay for paraeducators, you'd have to go back and amend your plan. So that's important that you have some flexibility in the language that you use. Provide purchase support materials by allocating funding. If available for supplies, you want to be very specific in that information. But be familiar with those allowable expenditures. In segment 1, we talked specifically about the things that can and can't be funded and where you can find that information in your handbook. Additionally, if you go to schoollandtrust.org, there's a list there that we've also provided to you electronically. The rules are simple for land trust expenditures. Let's stay within the bounds of the things we can actually fund, that they are academic related and tied to your goals. And if you're ever in doubt, just ask, because we'd much rather answer the question, tell you no, than have the state come back and pull the funding and have the school have to come up with the funding some other way. As you're making some additional considerations for your plans, you need to actually anticipate the real allocation. In August, it will be larger than the preliminary allocation identified in March. For instance, in the fiscal year 14 allocation has actually increased by almost 30% than what was originally anticipated. So provide enough support and detail in your plan for a contingency in case your funding increases. Insufficient detail would be the school community council will consider and then decide what to do. That's not sufficient. What you'll say is something to the effect of, if we do receive additional funds, we will expend it in this way, and be very specific about that. Remember, the Board of Education must have considered and approved any of those strategies, so that needs to be a part of your plan in advance. Lastly, I want to just remind you to measure your progress. That should be an inherent part of your agendas throughout the school year, that you take some time to review your plans and see how they're going. Approve the plan, submit online by November 15th. Execute and share the results with your council. Remember, good, better, best. Good that your council knows what your goals are, best or better that your community does, but best that your elected officials and other policymakers are informed about the decisions that are being made, and that they have an opportunity to understand and know what you're doing and what your goals are and how the funds are being expended. If we expect to have continued opportunities to receive these funds and allow our local patrons the chance to have such critical input, our elected officials need to be in on that information, and we should be providing to them on an ongoing basis. With respect to websites, there's some critical information that needs to be on your websites, and we've instructed our schools that if they're not able to put some of this information together, they should really just do their best. We expect an audit to occur. We expect that the first place for those auditors to look for compliance is on school websites. So please make sure that this information is up to date. Names and contact information for all members of the School Community Council, including an email and direct phone number. A proposed schedule for the year. Your land trust plan summary from the previous year. You should include your accomplishments and how the money was spent, including a copy of the budget if appropriate. Information should be sent us home as well. We want to make sure that we're communicating far and wide that information on how we've expended funds, what successes we had, how we improved academic experiences in our individual schools. Lastly, the last few items, rules of order and procedures that you have adopted, how you're conducting your business, and so people who are planning on coming to your meeting can get an idea of how to participate if appropriate. Your meeting minutes from the previous 3 years. This is going to be difficult for some of us. I'd encourage you to put the recordings if necessary to try and be compliant. Even though recordings are no longer required, they were previously required, and they may be the only type of meeting minutes that we have. So place as much of that information on school websites as possible. Now, when we look at our school community councils, I just want to spend a little time and talk about what parental engagement looks like, because this is something we're really focused on in Granite School District, and the school community council is really a great place to engage parents. And so I want to talk about a variety of issues that can come up that a school community council could really have a lot of input in with respect to school environments that are above and beyond your traditional school land trust plan and your academic goals. School community councils can really have a lot of input with respect to the school environment, bullying, recess, teacher quality, professional development, atmosphere, a lot of those issues. And speaking in general terms, particularly with teacher quality and professional development, we can't get specific on some of those things. That's not appropriate, but it is appropriate to have some say that we feel like these types of learning strategies are working well. And it is appropriate for school community councils to want to go into the classrooms and see how things are working, especially as they've allocated funding for technologies, to go and see how those technologies are working to improve your math scores, for instance. That is entirely appropriate. At least annually, School community councils by law should be reviewing bullying policies and procedures. And each of your school community councils, each of your school principals should be currently constituting a bullying plan. And that should be reviewed annually and adjusted as appropriately. That's not to say the school community council has the authority to change it, but they have the opportunity to provide input, and principals would be wise to take that input and utilize it. I'm going to give you an example of another way the school community councils can have an impact in their school environment, specifically with respect to safety issues. I served on a school community council in Davis County, and we kept having issues with our drive-through, and parents who would get there early and park there early and wouldn't pull through as they were supposed to, and inherently would cause traffic issues onto a main thoroughfare in my town. And so we worked together with the local city officials and as parents to resolve this issue, recognizing that the administration had very little ability to impact the discussion outside of simply putting up some additional signs that were being ignored anyway. So, for instance, and I'm going to go through these principles really quick and then give you the example. When we talk about parental engagement, it really should be something that's infused into everything that we do. Any strategies that we have problems or challenges in our school will have a parental engagement element. And, parents are driving the discussion on that solution. School community councils are a parent-driven process, not a principal-driven process. They're a parent-driven process, and I'm going to say that over and over again. Parents should be driving the discussion, but more importantly, they should be driving solutions. Parental engagement discussion is infused into all of our systems, activities, and programs when we're looking at addressing any of our issues, whether it's related to school community councils or not. We try to do this at the district level. We try to bring in a parental engagement component to find out or get input from parents or have them help us to create solutions. School community councils, as such, are the perfect place to address aligning parental engagement efforts with your school's academic goals, safety goals, environmental goals. When I'm talking environment, I'm not talking about fumes or things like that. I'm talking about the educational environment, improving that atmosphere for our kids. If kids don't feel safe in our schools, if they don't feel like it's a great learning environment, they're not going to learn. And so it's very critical that parents play an important role in this. So back to my example of the drive-through situation, as parents on the school community council, we started driving this discussion that we wanted to see some inherent ways that we could change this. So as a council and as parents, we decided that we were going to be issuing tickets. Now these were obviously fake tickets that provided information to parents who were driving too fast in the drive-through, parking in the wrong place, or parking period, and not moving through as they were supposed to. And we started signing up volunteers to come and be at the school morning and afternoon, a couple days a week, and started issuing these tickets just to provide people with information. In addition to that, we worked with our local police department and got the administration to grant permission for the city to issue tickets. And so we actually had a crosswalk in our drive-through that was manned by a volunteer. And as people violated the principles of the crosswalk or sped through, local police would actually come in once a week randomly and ticket those people. And in addition to that, would help us manage traffic flow and keep people moving. We had two ladies in particular who would sit at the very front of the drive-through. They didn't want their kids to have to walk any further than they had to on those cold days, the shortest distance possible from the drive-through to the door. And they wanted their kid to be able to stay in their car for 20 minutes while they waited for school to start, and it caused a major traffic jam every morning. And so we actually had parents out there encouraging them to move along. Actually gave a whack on a hood once, and I'm not encouraging that, but it was a parent-driven process. It was a parent-driven discussion, and it was a parent-driven solution. And it made a huge difference in creating a better safe and more safe environment for our kids. This is the end of segment 2 for all members of our school community councils. I would encourage you, if you have some time, to spend, this is the longest segment at 24 minutes right now. Our first segment's about 12 minutes, and the last segment will be about 7 minutes for our chairs and vice chairs. Obviously, when we did this training in person, there was a little more extensive discussion and questions were answered. If you do have questions, you can find my contact information, Ben Horsley, Communications Director for Granite School District, or for Rob Averett, our Resource Director, in the School Community Council Handbook. In addition to that, you can always email us at communications@graniteschools.org or contact my office and department at 385-646-4529. Once again, 385-646-4529. You can call me anytime with any questions you might have. I'd be glad to help you out. Thank you so much for your participation and for taking this training. Please make sure that you email us and let us know that you did participate in the training so we can keep an accurate log of those who have participated. Thank you so much and have a great day.